Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Heritage. And on today's episode, we are going back to the Andean Mountains, in which we're looking at Quebrada Humahuaca, which is quite an interesting old tale. It's an old trade route, correct?
That's correct. It's a major cultural route that has some 10,000 years of near continuous route use.
Casual, nice and easy, no big deal.
Yeah,
Not a big deal.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's along the basically it follows what is known as the Valley of the Rio Grande into the Andean Highlands. About 150 kilometers worth of territory throughout what is now Argentina.
Which, for those of you playing at home, I know what you might be thinking. The Rio Grande, isn't that the border between the United States and Mexico? Here is a secret for you. The Spanish settlers didn't differentiate between what Grand River they're crossing. There's a
Yeah,
lot of Rio Grandes.
yeah, yeah. There's the Rio Grande is the most common name for a river in Spanish vernacular. It just means big river. It's why you also come across a lot of sites called was it a Ciudad Veja, which just means abandoned city.
Yeah, so kind of a common trend here, but wow, the landscape here in Argentina is gorgeous.
Oh yeah, it's
Beautiful
beautiful. This
Andean mountains.
yeah. The Andean landscape is diverse and beautiful, from very rapidly elevating sky-clad mountains to basically desert wastelands. It can go from one to the other just like that, which is why the trade route follows the river valleys from the River Grande to the Rio Leon.
I personally love just looking at all the banding and the rocks and the stratigraphy. But then also, a lot of times, what people may not quite realize or understand is a lot of the trade routes that exist are usually just the path of least resistance. Humans, as a species, are very optimizing, and we tend to just walk across the same paths because they're the most efficient.
Yeah, and
This is definitely one where they followed the landscape and went, yeah, fuck it, I'm not climbing those massive mountains. I'm just going to walk her right in the middle.
yeah, well, this route actually does a nice job of parsing between the plateau of Puna and a massive eastern woodland. So you go on this route, you are literally boxed in by cliff face and impenetrable forest. This is literally the only way around. Is how this route works. It's literally just all right. So the forest ends like 50 feet from the mountain. That's where we will go.
And it's pretty cool because a site like this that has been inhabited for so long, you do see evidence of early hunter gatherers having lived and worked along these landscapes, having worked here. And then you can even see the transition into large agricultural societies. And there's quite a bit of terraced fields and stonewalled fields that are about 1,500 years old. And the cool part in my mind is they're still actively used.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, definitely. This area features it's featured such continuous use that there is evidence from Neolithic hunter gatherers through the height and glory of the Incan Empire, all the way into the freedom fighters who were using it to end colonialism during the 19th century.
We love freedom fighters.
It's just, literally the rebels just went into this old Incan road and like, well, we can use this.
Well, and that's a really good point for us to highlight here. And a lot of times, European mindsets, we always think of the Roman roads having been this large interconnected network of roads that crossed the entire continent. The Incans had their own roadway system that was just as advanced, which is insane to think about. And this road here was a pathway that was used by generations before, and then the Incans came along and were like, "Ah, we'll just tweak it. We're not going to really reroute it." It's not like the modern day where man's ego and their egotism leads them to think that they can control the landscape. No, here it's just like, yeah, we're just going to avoid the landscape. We're just going to walk along the edge.
Yeah, the human capacity to plow through nature didn't really exist until after the Industrial Revolution. So basically, any road that was put down before the year 1900 is going to abide by the natural confines of the earth.
So it's pretty cool, and this is one of those very rare sites where you can see almost continuous use throughout the time frame. And that I think is probably the coolest part, and that it maintains quite a good bit of its original integrity, but also allows it to live in this dynamic growing zone. So they have the property be inscribed and they have a buffer zone, but there are still a lot of cases in which it's used.
Definitely, yeah. They've got the terraces. They've got a number of towns along it actually that still exist. Those that were Incan, pre-Incan, Hispanic, just people built along this. Even just throughout history, because why not? It's 150 kilometers, and for with the exception of probably the last 200 years, it's the only way through the mountains. So people are just going to turn rest spots into buildings and buildings into towns. That's just how humans are.
But I think it's cool too to even see that evolution beyond just the human side of things, but like the switch in culture. I mean, we went from predominantly hunter gatherer peoples to a more sedentary agriculture. And this road is so old that you can see when and where that switch happened, which is unrivaled in most parts of the world because like you go to areas like the Middle East, those roadways have been paved over 15 times over. In Europe, a lot of those Roman roads were just straight up paved over. Here you have them in its authenticity, in its original landscape, and you see the inclusion of Spanish churches that came from their mission periods and from the conquests. And it's just very, very cool to see. And the site itself is very well protected by the management that's put in place on it and the provincial laws that protect it.
Yep. And because this place was so central to civilization in the area, whether it was indigenous or colonial for the past 10,000 years, you get a level of intensity with which the human race is paying attention to this site and modifying the environment, working the road, working the land around it, building towns. You get a level of that that's more or less unrivaled almost anywhere else in the world. It is certainly unrivaled in South America, and you could probably name only one or two other routes that even come close to matching this.
It's really cool to see something of this degree and this nature. And like I said, it is very well protected. There's natural decrees of 1941. There's the National Constitution of 1994. And we highlight this a lot, but there's a lot of management. The management plan is very comprehensive and allows people to actually work within it and have a guideline as to how not only are we going to protect it, how we're going to evolve with it. How we're going to take this massively historic landmark and preserve it for future generations, but also learning about it and how we can adjust the modern day living around it. It's very cool, and I know it's not their intention, so to speak, but this is straight up just a continuation of the history of the road. That road evolved as mentalities and thought processes changed.
Yeah, and yeah, and that's the key thing to note with why this is significant and what's going on here is that each individual aspect of the road, each individual part, town, church, field, whatever you're looking at, is entirely unremarkable by itself. But because it's all together, because it's one thing after another, after another, after another, over and over again along this massive road, it becomes a tapestry of the people going back 10 millennia. It becomes something more. Just like how at a buffet, any single thing at the buffet is not a meal, but all of it together is something. That's how this is working. That's just how this becomes so significant and so unique is that it's everything together.
And yeah, I think that's probably a pretty poetic and a good point for us to wrap up today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know what you think down below and let us know your thoughts on this site, and we'll talk to you in the next one.